More than anybody, Doug McClure really despised him. Born Douglas Osborne McClure on May 11, 1935, in Glendale, California, Doug McClure was the son of a professional pianist and an aircraft engineer. The dynamic post-war Southern California milieu formed his youth. His early passions were sports, music, and drama. McClure went to UCLA as a young man and first studied geology. However, his amazing looks and charm quickly pushed him into the realm of acting, a choice that would always change his life. McClure's early years in the entertainment business were defined by minor parts in movies and guest spots on well-known television shows. Starting in the late 1950s, he worked in shows including Death Valley Days and Maverick, but his casting as Trampas, the friendly, fast-witted cowboy in NBC's The Virginian, in 1962 propelled him to national notoriety. The Virginian, one of the longest-running TV westerns ever, brought McClure into millions of American homes every week. His performance of Trampas, a character roughly based on the one developed by Owen Wister in his classic 1902 book, was praised for its warmth, comedy, and vigor. Unlike the conventional Western gunslinger, Trampas had a sparkle in his eye, a love of mischief, and a heart of gold, a mix that made him very popular with people of all ages. Cementing his legacy as a TV icon, McClure stayed with the Virginian for all 9 seasons of its existence from 1962 to 1971. He became symbolic of a new sort of Western hero during this period, one who could mix brawn with sensitivity, roughness with a hint of romanticism. His performance helped to maintain the popularity of the show and helped to define the changing scene of Western television during a period when urban dramas and comedies were vying for more attention. Though none of his other parts quite matched the cultural influence of Trampas, McClure kept working steadily in cinema and television after The Virginian. Many of them made by British director Kevin Connor. He featured in several adventure and science fiction movies during the 1970s. Among these were The Land That Time Forgot, 1975, At the Earth's Core, 1976, and The People That Time Forgot, 1977, all of which highlighted McClure's ability for action and his natural relationship with co-stars. Although many saw these movies as campy or pulp entertainment, they gained a cult following and proved McClure's adaptability and ageless appeal even further. McClure had a pleasant and down-to-earth persona throughout his career, even in a sometimes harsh field. Given his celebrity, he was noted for being humble, kind with fans, and generous with co-stars. Behind the scenes, he battled the pressures of popularity and personal problems, including several marriages and health concerns later in life. Still, he kept working, showing up in guest parts on television series, including Murder, She Wrote, Magnum P.I., and Fantasy Island well into the 1980s and 199 Alls. One of the less well-known facets of McClure's impact is how he influenced popular culture outside his direct cinema work. His name and personality made such an impact that the character Troy McClure on The Simpsons, portrayed by Phil Hartman, was a blatant parody and tribute to both Doug McClure and Troy Donahue, combining their names and public images into a single sarcastic Hollywood cliché. McClure's family has stated he was conscious of the spoof and thought it funny, valuing the loving quality of the homage. Doug McClure's name pops up unexpectedly in 2 notable episodes of the British sci-fi comedy series Red Dwarf, which is a tongue-in-cheek reference to his ongoing cultural influence. Rimmer and Crichton discover themselves on a version of Earth where time runs backward in the episode called Backwards. Rimmer asks in a deadpan tone to the ship's computer, Holly, "Do we expect to see a herd of flesh-eating dinosaurs feeding off the bones of Doug McClure?" as they attempt to grasp their surroundings. The joke is based on McClure's connection to low-budget campy science fiction and fantasy movies, especially those from the 1970s and early 1980s, in which he frequently fought prehistoric monsters or came upon ancient civilizations. The line mocks McClure's regular parts in fantasy, improbable stories where he would bravely confront dinosaurs, monsters, or otherworldly dangers. In the episode Legion, another self-referential wink comes when Crichton tells Lister, "I'm sorry sir, it is another Doug McClure," apologizing for the movie choice for the night. "Don't strike me please." The remark implies McClure's reputation, at least in British pop culture, as a star of formulaic, frequently over-the-top adventure movies. The joke depends on the notion that watching yet another one of McClure's films could be interpreted as a punishment or a comic endurance test. Particularly among aficionados of cult sci-fi, McClure's distinctive brand of adventure cinema continues to have an influence, as seen by the running gags about him in Red Dwarf. Notwithstanding such jokes, Doug McClure was a highly respected and somewhat prolific actor who built a significant career in both film and television. McClure, who studied acting and film with seriousness and discipline at the University of California, Los Angeles, UCLA, first aimed for a job behind the scenes. His natural appeal, athletic frame, and tough good looks caught the eye of casting directors fast, yet he ended up in front of the camera nearly accidentally. He became the epitome of the all-American leading guy with his laid-back appeal, chiseled features, and trademark blonde hair during the 1960s and 1970s. His seemingly miraculous talent to portray young parts long into middle age was one of the more interesting features of his career. Never seeming to age on television, he often played characters in their 20s or early 30s, far into his late 40s. Often playing the courageous, loyal, sometimes naive sidekick or second lead, this trait helped him in the time of TV westerns and adventure serials. From combat dramas to fantasy adventures, his genuine, honest voice and childish excitement made him a natural choice for many parts. Though McClure appeared in over 500 separate performances, including guest parts, television shows and movies, his legendary part as Trampas in The Virginian, 1962–1971, confirmed his legacy. A central character in the revolutionary Western series, running for 9 seasons, Trampas was a rude but good-hearted ranch worker, one of the first 90-minute Western shows on television. McClure's performance of Trampas was laced with a natural appeal and wit that people enjoyed. He added distinct energy and warmth to the part, therefore transforming Trampas from a dependable hero to a really lovable and complicated character. McClure's performance redefined the Western sidekick as more than simply a supporting character. He was usually the episode's emotional center. McClure underlined Trampas in a TV film called Backtracks in 1969, so stressing the character's appeal and the lasting love for McClure among the people. Although his Trampas notoriety was the apex of his television career, he kept busy in movies and television, usually leaning towards science fiction and fantasy ventures in subsequent years. His second career as a cult sci-fi explorer, where he portrayed brave individuals trapped in prehistoric or mythological areas, was exemplified by titles such as The Land That Time Forgot, 1974, At the Earth's Core, 1976, and The People That Time Forgot, 1977. Doug McClure's commitment to acting never lessened even as he fought major health issues in the last years of his life. In the mid-1990s, he was stricken with lung cancer, a condition he battled with quiet resolve and tenacity. He kept taking parts, appearing in Richard Donner's Maverick, 1994, in a little but nostalgic cameo as one of the poker players, a loving tribute from Hollywood to a known face, refusing to let sickness hold him down. Many of which aired posthumously. He also appeared in episodes of Burke's Law, 1994, and Kung Fu. The Legend Continues, 1993, as well as the TV movie Riders in the Storm, 1995. These performances were a last tribute to his professional will and passion for his work. From the outside, Doug McClure and James Drury seemed like an inseparable couple, the on-screen dynamic team driving the success of The Virginian, one of television's longest-running and most cherished Western programs. On cinema, their roles, Trampas, the fun-loving devil-may-care cowboy McClure, and the serious, principled title character, The Virginian, Drury, balanced one another in ideal harmony. But behind the scenes, a completely different, more volatile relationship brewed, one marked by deep hatred, conflicting egos, and professional rivalry. Many who worked on the program say Doug McClure had a strong and unrelenting hatred for James Drury, which became more pronounced with each passing year of the series' 9-season run. McClure's stated hatred started early in the early 1960s Virginian output. Although both performers had major parts, it soon became obvious that the production centered on Drury's character. Often presented as the moral compass of the show, Drury held the title part, had first billing, and though a likable and funny one, McClure was reduced to the role of sidekick, despite his own great appeal and evident charm. For an actor as ambitious and gifted as McClure, this hierarchy was not easy to swallow. He thought he added flavor and heart to the show, and that Trampas, his character, warranted more central narratives and accolades. He felt unappreciated, and held Drury responsible. Their off-camera personas simply stoked the flames. James Drury was famous for being serious, earnest, and somewhat distant. Often with a seriousness McClure deemed pompous, he carried himself with the weight of a classic leading man. In contrast, Doug McClure was cheerful, pleasure-seeking, and famous for his practical jokes and laid-back attitude. This disparity in mentality sometimes caused on-set conflicts. While McClure's pranks might relieve the tension but also disrupt attention, something that angered Drury. Drury allegedly favored calm and concentration throughout shooting. Often crew members and co-stars found themselves trapped in the center of this quiet conflict of will. Close insiders say that subtle power moves and ego conflicts were what ultimately damaged their relationship. McClure thought Drury would go out of his way to exercise creative control, occasionally affecting scenes or scripts to minimize Trampus's influence. McClure saw it as a personal insult, even if it was debatable, if it was deliberate, or just a result of Drury's standing as lead. He thought Drury wanted to make sure the focus stayed directly on him since he felt nervous about being upstaged. Naturally appealing, and a fan favorite, McClure frequently stole situations with his wit and charm, which would have challenged Drury's more subdued presence. With time, minor offenses turned into festering anger. Often, their encounters off the set were chilly. Although they went to publicity events together and kept a professional front, those connected to the program knew they hardly communicated, unless absolutely required. Drury stayed chilly and distant, whereas McClure may provide a snarky joke or forced grin. McClure was known to vent his displeasure behind closed doors, telling friends and colleagues that Drury was too full of himself and unpleasant to deal with. Half-jokingly, he once said that if Trampus could hit the Virginian in the face, he'd do it gladly. Though McClure was by no means a man known for animosity, those who knew him best believed that if there was one person in Hollywood he really couldn't stand, it was James Drury. Ironically, even if they both disliked one another, the conflict between them might have really helped the program survive. Perhaps because it was created in the embers of real-life enmity, their on-screen chemistry was magnetic. The friction gave their performances a natural edge, a little spark that enhanced the drama and kept the audience interested for almost 10 years. They hardly spoke of one another publicly in later years, once the Virginian finished, and both guys went on to other endeavors. Their words were measured and careful when they did. McClure, who passed away in 1995, never publicly discussed the hostility. Those closest to him said the hatred never quite went away. Living until 2020, Drury sometimes paid courteous homage to McClure's abilities nonetheless. The chill in his voice was clear. Time could have softened the distinctions between competition and bitterness, but one thing is certain: Doug McClure, who was adored by so many and got along with almost everyone in the industry, had one exception. James Drury, in his opinion, was the one guy he really couldn't tolerate. Not only a co-worker, beloved actor most known for his long-running part as Trampus on the television western series The Virginian, Doug McClure passed suddenly, at age 59 on February 5, 1995. Complications from lung cancer, a disease he had been secretly fighting for over a year, caused his death. McClure passed away in Sherman Oaks, California, a Los Angeles neighborhood where he had lived for many years and where he had spent his last weeks surrounded by family and close friends. McClure had been working professionally just a few weeks previously, on January 8, 1995, showing his commitment to acting even in the late phases of disease. Filming an episode of the television crime drama One West Waikiki, which featured Cheryl Ladd and was set in the tropical settings of Honolulu, he was on site in Hawaii. McClure fell unexpectedly on set during production, apparently suffering a stroke. Production on the show was promptly stopped and McClure was hurried to a closed hospital for emergency medical care. Many of the cast and crew, who were ignorant of the degree of his disease, were startled by the event. McClure was rapidly flown back to Los Angeles to have more intensive care given the seriousness of his condition. Admitted to a large hospital, physicians performed a comprehensive investigation and found that the lung cancer he had been secretly battling for more than a year had spread. The cancer had grown aggressively beyond his lungs to his liver and bones, thus his situation was deadly. His family, and long-standing admirers, who had loved him for decades, found this terrible diagnosis to be a terrible shock. McClure stayed courageous and calm despite the bad news, keeping a good attitude, as best he could under a fast-advancing disease. McClure was married to his fifth wife, Diane Soldani, whom he had married in 1979, at the time of his death. Over 15 years their marriage endured. By all accounts, Diane stayed a constant presence in his life, amid his health battles, loving and caring for him till the end. McClure's earlier marriages had ended in divorce. Before he had been married 4 times, 2 of those divorces took place at the peak of his popularity, while he was featured on The Virginian, a show running from 1962 to 1971. A typical problem for television stars of the day, the pressure on his personal life was probably caused by the demands of his job, long hours on set, and never-ending travel. Though he struggled with disease and personal difficulties, Doug McClure stayed a well-liked and respected figure in the entertainment business. His commitment to his work, his tenacity in the face of personal hardship, and his on-screen appeal won him a devoted following. News of his death spurred condolences from co-stars, colleagues, and fans who recalled him not only for his rugged good features and great performances, but also for his kindness, sense of humor, and backstage professionalism.